I'll call the meeting to order, please. It's 6 p.m. And we're going to start the evening. So welcome to Monday, July the 10th, the St. John Common Council meeting. We're going to start the evening with a land acknowledgement. So over to you, Councillor Ogden.
The land on which the city of St. John is situated is the traditional territory of the Wolastoqey, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq, Passamaquoddy, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to land and resources. Take a moment to pause, please.
Okay, I'll ask everyone to please stand for the national anthem. Okay, so we have a 680-page kit tonight for open. That's more like it. We've only had these like 200 and 300 ones recently, so this is back to where we've been. Lots of work to do tonight. So City Clerk, over to you for the first item.
Thank you, Your Worship. So first item would be 2.1 on the agenda, approval of minutes of June the 26th.
Councillor Killen and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is the approval of the agenda, and we have a couple additions. So the first addition would be item 16.1, and that was distributed to council earlier today, and it's a request to cancel the public hearing from the proponent at 49 Quinton. Next would be 17.1, and that's a recommendation from Committee of the Whole with respect to Housing Accelerator Fund. And finally, there's a request from staff, as we have auditors waiting for item 13.2. We're requesting that that item be moved right after the consent agenda, but before members' comments.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is disclosures of conflict of interest, if we have any.
Conflict of interest? Not seeing any. Next item.
Item 5 is the consent agenda.
Deputy, over to you, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move 5.1 through to 5.6, please.
Councillor Killen is the seconder on that. On the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. I will say quickly that that's a good news consent agenda. If you have an opportunity to take a look at it, you have the Trans-Canada Trail solar lighting For Rockwood Park up there, you have the local immigration program that's going to get some money as well. You have the New Brunswick Integrated Bilateral Agreement. The total is 3.8 million, and there's going to be a contribution from the feds and from the province, and our contribution will be 1 million. That is for the Lancaster Lagoon Aeration System Renewal Project, and there's money for the Boar's Head Road sidewalk. So all good news there. Next item, City Clerk.
Okay, so we've moved ahead to item 13.2, and this was a Finance Committee submission on the 2022 audited financial statements.
Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Sullivan, as Chair of Finance.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Finance Committee met a week and a half ago with our auditors to go over the consolidated financial statements and receive our audit for last year. Happy to present to you the information in our kit, the important pieces. We had a very scintillating conversation with our auditors about how things went last year. Received a clean audit opinion from Deloitte. We also, your Finance Committee met with the auditors in an in-camera session, and I'm happy to report that the only comments the auditors had in the in-camera session was how much they enjoyed the professional work of our staff, and how good it was to work with them, and our staff worked professionally and efficiently in supplying them the information to help them do their audit work. So with that clean opinion, Stephen Lund from Deloitte is on the line should any of council have any questions with regards to the audit. And to get on the floor with regards to questions, the recommendations are that Common Council approve the audited 2022 consolidated financial statements, that Common Council approve the 2022 statement of revenue and expenses of the St. John Trade and Convention Center, and that Common Council approve the 2022 City of St. John Trust Funds financial statements.
Councillor Radwan's seconding. Anyone have any questions? If not, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you to our guests for being here, just in case we needed your help. Next item, City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next item is item 6 on the agenda. That is for members' comments.
Members' comments, your 2-minute speed round. Councillor Radwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to Key Industries. I went for their community day and it was lovely. Passport to Parks was an incredible success out at the Res, and a big thank you to staff. It was unbelievable how many people were there. The parking lot was full. The side of the road was full of cars. It was just wonderful. So they did a great job. And I also, after that, headed over to the Ukrainian fundraiser, and St. John certainly turned up for them. I just wanted to also say thank you to Chief and his staff, because St. John Finest were there from St. John Fire. And I also wanted to mention a kudos to Envision St. John. They just started a program for ambassadors for St. John. So basically it helps people go through a course so that they learn about where all the tourism sites are in St. John, and if there's any newcomers or people wanting to open business, where to direct them. I did the program. It was great, and now all of my staff are doing it. So I highly recommend people looking into that. It was really great, and that team there that we always had at Discover St. John, they always do good work. I know Daniel Rito worked with them too, so they did a really good job. And I just quickly want to say a quick shout out to Councillor Sullivan, who's our Chair of Finance. I just think you're doing a great job chairing. We have some great meetings, efficient meetings, but you're very fair, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Norton, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks to Councillor Radwan for mentioning Chair Sullivan and his job for finance. Give credit where credit is due. So does a great job, and I can tell you it involves us all as committee members. So and obviously the professional staff that helped bring it all together. But thank you for his leadership on that committee. It's great. I just wanted to mention these notable young ladies who are great leaders on the west side. Raised $600 for a good cause in our community. They did a lemonade sale, and with that $600, it's going to be going to one of our local charities. But Sadie Graham, Maya Howe, Dorothy McDade, Greta Graham, Lila Howe, Grace Joyce, and Casey Nolan, who are probably out playing, but I know between themselves and their hardworking parents raised over $600. And that will be going to a good cause, including homelessness and addiction and some other things. So they did on a sunny Saturday afternoon on the way to the Irving Nature Park, and thanks to all those that stopped and quenched their thirst. So good job to those young ladies for the work that they did, and their parents are probably still tired from that one. So well done. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to add on to this, the event St. John Helps Ukraine, held in Rockwood Park, raised almost $10,000 this weekend. Councillor Ogden and myself were out there, and there was a lot of people there. They raised a lot of money, and they actually had nice weather, which was kind of nice as well. Also, the mayor and I attended a barbecue at Key Industries on Charlotte Street, and that organization does phenomenal work, and that barbecue had a phenomenal turnout. I couldn't believe how many people were in that yard, but it was packed. So thanks very much for both organizations for all that they did for the community, and I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sullivan, over to you.
Thanks, Your Worship. A couple of quick ones. It's summer. Summer seems to be bringing out more and more music in the neighborhoods, thanks to the folks at Portland United Church, who Tuesday evenings through the summer will have bands performing. And when you're finished at Portland United, you can pick up your lawn chair and take it to Shanex in Milledgeville, thanks to the sponsorship of Jean Coutu out there. Their music night is Wednesday night. So as our weather is getting great, you can enjoy the outdoors and the music thanks to those folks. And good news from the health and safety standpoint, some sad news that the rains have mixed up some water at Lily Lake and Tucker Park, but they are now reopened for swimming. The water's been tested, so as the weather has gotten nice, great idea to head to the beach. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I just want to thank, there's so much going on in St. John. Any day you can find all kinds of things to go to. So I want to thank our community sponsors who come out all the time and support all of these events as they're happening in the city. And they create a lot of fun for people, a lot of diversity of entertainment that you can go to. So it's great to have a community, a business community that's so engaged really, and that it always does step up to the plate. So I just want to say thank you to the business communities and to everyone who are the community sponsors for us. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is a proclamation, item 7.1 on your agenda. This is a Lung Cancer Awareness Month proclamation.
Whereas lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death among men and women in Canada, accounting for more deaths than colon cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer combined. And whereas over 20,000 Canadians are expected to die of lung cancer and bronchial cancer in 2023, representing nearly 1/4 of all cancer deaths in Canada. And whereas, according to research by Canadian oncologists, lung cancer is expected to be the most commonly diagnosed cancer in Canada, with over 30,000 new lung cancer cases expected in 2023. And whereas the 5-year survival rate for localized lung cancer is about 60%, but only approximately 24% of lung cancers are diagnosed at that early stage. And whereas funding for lung cancer research trails far behind funding for research for many other cancers, and additional research is needed in early diagnosis, screening, and treatment for lung cancer, as well as lung cancer affecting women and lung cancer health disparities. And whereas organizations working in Canada, such as the Canadian Lung Cancer Screening Initiative, are committed to educating about lung cancer and lung cancer screening and working to increase lung cancer screening rates. Now therefore, I, Mayor Donna Node Reardon of St. John, do hereby proclaim the month of July as Lung Cancer Awareness Month in the city of St. John. Next item, City Clerk.
Your worship, we're a little early to begin our public hearing, which is scheduled for 6:30. Can I suggest we deal with the two items that were added to the agenda first?
Okay,
So the first would be 16.1, and that was the request by the proponent to withdraw the application for the public hearing of 49 Quinton Avenue. And so we would be looking for a motion from council that council accept the request from the applicant to withdraw the rezoning application and cancel the associated public hearing for 49 Quinton Avenue scheduled for July 10, 2023.
thank you. So I've got Councillor Ogden and Councillor Radwan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
And the item that came from Committee of the Whole, that was with respect to the Housing Accelerator Fund. And the motion would be resolved that council directs staff to submit a City of St. John Housing Accelerator Fund application to Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation, generally in the form as presented to Committee of the Whole and subject to the attestation by the Chief Financial Officer.
Okay, I'll take a motion for that. Councillor Killen and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
And I believe it would be safe to do item 11.1, and that's a submission from Councillor Sullivan with respect to a request to present by St. John Energy.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan, over to you to read your motion. We'll get you a seconder.
Thanks, Your Worship. After consulting with the city clerk, he recommended this wording for the motion that notwithstanding our policy on the 2-week wait, that we refer to the clerk to invite and schedule a presentation from St. John Energy on their recent annual report.
Okay. Seconder, Councillor Killen on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is 12.1. This is a verbal update from the Chief Administrative Officer on select catalytic projects.
Over to you, CAO.
Good evening, Worship and members of Council. I am going to provide a brief update on some of the catalytic infrastructure projects, and I'll touch on some updates on one of the advocacy projects as well. So first, I have an update on the Central Peninsula School Community Hub. The city was very pleased to attend a funding announcement on June 29th, where the province of New Brunswick committed $7.5 million to create a new community hub in the South End as part of the new Central Peninsula School. This has long been a priority for council, and in April of this year, the city formally advocated to the province for the creation of a hub for the new South End School and the new North End School. This hub will be transformational for the South End and its current and future residents. At this point, the province is considering its financial support for the hub to be a pilot program at this stage. So there's no formal announcement or funding for a hub for the new North End School. At this time, the province does intend to design the North End School so that a hub could be potentially integrated at a later date. In terms of one of our other catalytic projects, Fundy Key, you can see quite a lot of progress has occurred there. So on the tidal steps, you know, there's a lot of work that's occurring on the tidal steps. There's been a breakwater put in and a pump system to manage the tidal water. And we're adding base materials and foundation for the new construction. So when that work is done, it's going to see several levels, retaining walls, and other granite slabs that will form steps and landings and pathways to reinforce that connection with the water. There's a lot of work underway as well on the ice rink portion of the design. Formwork for the perimeter of the rink have been established. Insulation and rebar is being laid, and refrigerant tubing is being installed. And that's that white tubing that you see if you look down on that site now. So that's going to be used to support the concrete slab, and it's going to be used to keep the ice during the wintertime. Of course, the stage is a big component of the design as well, and we saw, in the last couple months, some work underground with the foundation work, but now you can see the real structure of that stage rising up. So the main structure is fully in place now, and work has started on roofing. So the construction of the stage is going to continue to develop, and it's going to enclose the areas and finish the accessible washrooms as well as the mechanical and electrical rooms, which will service the rest of the site, both the rink portion and the fountain portion in one part of it. So we're still on track to complete this project by the end of 2023. Our comms team actually recently put an update on our social media that had all kinds of pictures of the progress of the construction work, also some renderings of the finished product. So they were really fantastic to give you a sense of what's coming down the road. So anybody who's interested is encouraged to check that out. In terms of the new comprehensive recreational facility, we are still awaiting feedback on our funding application with the federal government. We have engaged with the Fundy Region Services Commission on an arena needs assessment, which we anticipate will be a requirement for any provincial funding support for any new or replacement arenas in our whole region. So the Fundy Region Services Commission is seeking more information from the province on what the parameters of such a study might be, and they do intend to complete that work this year. In terms of an update on catalytic advocacy projects, I do have an update on affordable housing. So work continues on advancing the city's priority of affordable housing. The city is anxiously waiting word from CMHC on its funding application for the Rapid Housing Initiative. The city is also in the process of a major funding application for the Housing Accelerator Fund, details of which will be briefed later this evening, which, if successful, could have the potential of increasing the amount of residential development in St. John by upwards of 50% over the coming 3 years. The city is currently studying the proposed provincial statement of public interest and inclusionary zoning regulations as they relate to the Community Planning Act. The province of New Brunswick have also released their long-awaited 10-year provincial housing strategy at the end of June, and it contains innovative actions that'll benefit St. John and its residents, including a direct-to-tenant rental benefit, the creation of a new rent bank, construction of 40 new public housing units in St. John, which was previously announced, increased funding amounts for the development of subsidized housing, increased supply of skilled trades professionals, support communities in the development of housing strategies and plans, and work with communities to reduce barriers by improving policies and bylaws. With that, Your Worship, that concludes my verbal update.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the CAO on the update? If not, I'll take a motion to receive for information. Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Lowe on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Your Worship, I don't believe there'd be enough time to deal with the two presentations we have scheduled for 12.2 and 13.1, so I would suggest we go to general correspondence.
Okay.
We have 3 items there. The first one's 15.1. That's a letter from D. Darling, request to present regarding parking pass. There's a recommendation to refer this to the CAO.
Okay. Deputy and Councillor Radwan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is a letter from C. Stevenson, request to present regarding SPCA.
CAO, did you want to say a couple words about just that concept?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So the current contract with the SPCA does not include any element of cat control service. There was actually at one time a much more robust contract with the SPCA for dog and cat control services prior to 2012. It had a much broader scope, but that was reduced at that time as a cost-saving measure. So you'll be aware that staff are working on a status quo budget for 2024, which was briefed to the Finance Committee on kind of at the end of June. And that was essentially status quo service levels. If revenue does come in greater than what is built in there right now as an assumption, there will be lots of opportunity to talk about service enhancements, such as what's being proposed with this submission. And I would suggest that this be considered as part of that larger discussion.
Okay, so are we receiving for information?
Yeah, I would recommend this receive.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan and Deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next, we have item 15.3. It's a request regarding neighborhood watch signs.
Okay, with this one, you would want to say a couple of words on that one?
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to members of council, we used to have quite a robust neighborhood watch program in our community. We haven't seen any requests like this come along in quite a number of years now. However, staff would be pleased to engage with the proponent making this request to see where we can help, whether that be with assistance in procuring the signs or installation of those. So if you wish to refer that to the CAO, staff will follow up
Refer to
directly.
CAO? Refer to CAO? Okay. Oh, sorry. Councillor Radwan, your light's on. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So just a question to you, through to you, to the CAO. Just wondering if maybe this should be referred to the Police Commission?
To the what?
Should it be referred to the Police Commission? This is something that came up in a community meeting that I had a while ago, and the police had some guidance that they were kind of giving to the community. So I was wondering if it's something maybe we should be sending over to the Police Commission to look at.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Radwan, I would suggest we could certainly connect with police staff and see if they have any guidance on this type of thing. But I think it's something where we should be able to lend some assistance.
Thank you. Deputy?
Yeah, I would certainly move that recommendation, and recognizing that, our members of Neighborhood Watch do a lot for the neighborhood, and, just by being present, you're really making your neighborhood more secure. So totally support it 100%.
Thank you.
If I get a seconder, we'll go.
Okay, I'll take a seconder. Councillor Lowe on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Okay, we have about 1 minute until
Okay.
the public hearing.
Well, wait.
Would you like to take a 1-minute recess? Your
I
Worship?
guess.
Okay.
All right, ready here? Yeah, 1 minute. It's not long. Okay, I'll call us back to order. All right, so next item, City Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. We're now entering the public hearing portion of the agenda. And just as a reminder to the audience, in case anyone has come in late, Common Council has canceled the public hearing for 49 Quinton Avenue at the request of the applicant. So if anyone's here for that, that one has been canceled. First item in the public hearings, Your Worship, is 9.1. This is a proposed zoning bylaw amendment. It has a Planning Advisory Committee recommendation and staff presentation for 21 Cannon Street and 348 Rockland Road.
Thank you. I'm sending this over to Director Dovelstein to introduce it.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, members of council. Our first public hearing this evening is an application for a rezoning application for 21 Cannon Street and 348 Rockland Road, submitted by Trevor Hill for this property. The application is seeking to rezone the property from general commercial to mid-rise residential to provide for the property to be used only for residential uses. And for those who may recall, this is also the old former Holy Trinity Church. So this is an adaptive reuse. And the application has been evaluated by our staff as well as the Planning Advisory Committee. And included in your package is a recommendation of approval for this rezoning and the rescinding of existing Section 59 conditions. And so with that, I'm pleased to turn things over to our planner, Thomas Llewellyn, for the staff presentation.
Thank you. Over to you, Thomas.
Thank you. The applicant is seeking to rezone the subject property from general commercial to mid-rise residential. The applicant is also subdividing the two respective addresses. It will be required to amend the existing Section 59 conditions to allow for multiple dwelling units. The subject site is located on the corner of Rockland Road and Cannon Street, just north of Somerset Street and Paradise Row. The existing church at 348 Rockland Road will be converted into a 2-unit building with a single-family home remaining at 21 Cannon Street. The immediate neighborhood is a mix of single-family, duplexes, and apartments. The property is within a walking distance to restaurants, shops, parks, and schools. The subject site is located within the stable residential designation, although it is on the edge of the commercial corridor designation that straddles Highway 1 of the municipal plan. The property is currently zoned general commercial, and the applicant is seeking to match the surrounding area by rezoning to mid-rise residential. The immediate area consists mainly of mid-rise residential, neighborhood community facility, general commercial, or corridor commercial. On June 5th, letters were sent to all property owners within 100 meters. On June 15th, the public notice for the public hearing was posted on the city's website. And as of this presentation, no letters were received from the public. Staff recommends removing existing Section 59 conditions that limit the use of the site to a maximum of 1 dwelling unit, as well as rezoning 21 Cannon Street and 348 Rockland Road to mid-rise residential. PEC recommended staff's recommendation as presented, recommending the rezoning of 21 Cannon Street and 348 Rockland Road from general commercial to mid-rise residential, and removing the existing Section 59 conditions placed on the property.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now I will open the public hearing. And I will ask if there's anyone here to speak against the application. I'll ask again if there's anyone here who wants to speak against the application. And for the last time, is there anyone here who would like to speak against the application at 21 Cannon Street? I'll ask if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application? And final call, is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application at 21 Cannon Street? So hearing no one, I'll close the public hearing. And I'll ask my team if anyone has any questions for staff. I've got a couple of questions here. Councillor Ogden, you're up first.
I would just like to say it's great that we're saving our architecture. Nobody in Canada has the architecture we have. It has great economic value. Driving down the highway, you see City Road, where the General Hospital once was, and that area. And I hope they light up the steeple, just from an architectural point of view. But this is just great to see us hanging on to our history and our architecture, because it makes us unique and helps draw a lot of tourists to the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor, over to you.
I would move the staff recommendations, Your Worship.
Thank you. So, City Clerk, I'll get you to give us a formal.
Yes, in this case, just two resolutions required, approval of first reading by title and approval of second reading by title.
Okay, so I have a mover for approval by first reading by title. I'll take a seconder. Councillor Killen on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
And I'll take a motion to approve second reading by title. Councillor, the Deputy, and Councillor Radwan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Next item, City Clerk.
Next is item 9.2. It's a proposed zoning bylaw amendment with a Planning Advisory Committee recommendation and a staff presentation for 460 Milford Road.
Director Dobbelstein, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of Council, this evening's second public hearing is for a rezoning application that was submitted by Seal Excavation Limited for the property located at 460 Milford Road on the west side. The application is seeking to rezone the site from 2-unit residential to mid-rise residential to allow for the development of 3 multi-unit buildings, totaling 78 units in total. The application has been evaluated by staff and the Planning Advisory Committee, and included in your agenda package are recommendations of approval for this rezoning subject to Section 59 conditions. And with that, I'm pleased to turn it over to our planner, Eva Matson, for the staff presentation.
Okay, over to you.
Thank you and good evening. So this proposal is to rezone and subdivide 460 Milford Road. The proposal is to rezone from 2-unit residential to mid-rise residential to support 3 apartment buildings and associated subdivision plan. The apartment buildings would all be 3 stories, with the west 2 apartments containing approximately 24 units and the east building containing 30 units. There would be appropriate landscaping on the property to act as buffers between adjacent residential, as well as larger setbacks than required. The new access from Milford Road would also be landscaped and would serve as new access for 452 and 454 Milford Road. There would be an easement across the lots for access for New Brunswick power transmission lines, which does kind of limit the layout of the site. So the applicant has provided a rendering on what the building would look like. Typical 3-story multi-unit with balconies to provide amenity space, as we see across the city. This would be a phased development, with the first building being constructed on Lot 1 starting in spring of 2024. 460 Milford is located in the Milford area on the west side of the city. In the immediate area of the subject site, there's largely only residential uses in the form of single and semi-detached homes, as well as mini homes. The wider neighborhood contains a mixture of low-density residential and community zoning, with some higher density found along south along Main Street and Dever Road. Dominion Park and Lou Murphy Park are also in the wider neighborhood. The property is within proximity to the commercial nodes located along Main Street West and Manawaganish Road, and it's located in proximity to major employment nodes, including the Moosehead Brewery, the Pulp Mill, and the Logistics Park. There are sidewalks on the north side of Milford Road to connect to the pedestrian network, and the site is serviced by the city's new Flex bus service. In the image above, you can see the subject site looking north. You can see Milford Estates to the far right of the image, and the treat area in the rear and far left is adjacent to city-owned land. The site is mostly cleared and level. This is south looking to Milford Road from the site. This would be the new access to the site, and that is 456 Milford and the treat area to the center, which would see landscaping to act as buffer between it and the new access. This is east looking from the site to 452 Milford. A new access would be created for this residence, and once again, proper landscaping buffering would be created between it and the proposed development. So the site is designated stable residential in the municipal plan, and while a density target is not provided for stable residential areas, housing of almost every form and density can be found. This proposal does meet the goals around providing densification in areas with municipal services and would introduce mid-rise residential development and diversify housing options for the neighborhood. It represents an opportunity to introduce additional density and would help the city meet the demand of future population growth, including things like providing opportunities to age in place. As said, the current zoning is 2-unit residential, and the area comprises a variety of low-density residential zoning, including 2-unit, 1-unit, and mini home park residential, with some community zoning such as the Dennis Morris Community Center. The wider area along Dever and Main Street West sees higher density zoning and some commercial zoning. And as proposed, this site would meet all requirements of the RM zone, including parking, amenity, and landscaping. So the proposal does include a subdivision of the parcel into 3 lots to accommodate the new buildings. PAC has granted a variance reliant on third reading from council. Staff are recommending some Section 59s included in the application as well. These are standard requirements for site plans to be presented to the development officer, stormwater management, and the like. Other recommended conditions include creating pedestrian access to Milford Road, more landscaping than required by the zoning bylaw, especially on those accesses. And instead of a condition limiting the number of number of units, there is a condition limiting the scale and massing of the building to what is proposed. This just allows for some flexibility and density, but keeps the project aligned with the scale being proposed during this process. And traffic has reviewed the application and attached traffic study and found no concerns, but a Section 59 condition needing updated traffic study if the proposed unit count increases by over 10% should help allay any future concerns of traffic. So letters were sent to all landowners within 100 meters of the subject property on June 5th, and 2 letters have been received, 1 in support and 1 in opposition. So PAC and staff are in alignment and recommend the approval of the proposed rezoning from 2-unit residential to mid-rise with attached Section 59 conditions. Staff are also recommending Common Council grant all necessary assents related to the subdivision, including money in lieu of LPP and any easements needed. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Eva. All right, so I will now open the public hearing, and I'll ask if there is anyone here who would like to speak against this application. I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak against this application. I'll ask for the 3rd time if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the application for 460 Milford Road. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application? Please come forward. Give us your name. For the record.
Your Worship and members of council, I'm pleased to speak on behalf of the development at 460 Milford Road. My name is Peter McKenzie of the architecture firm Como McKenzie Architecture, and we're pleased to be offering additional projects to the City of St. John for the past 35 years.
Sounds good.
The project at Milford Road is another example of development going into an area and neighborhood that was a little bit overlooked and neglected for new projects in the past, and we're excited to see this project go into that area, and we hope that it'll act as a catalyst for additional developments in the west side generally and in that area specifically. Other than that, I'd be pleased to answer any of your questions.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. McKenzie? Councillor Radwan, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you through you, Mayor, to Mr. McKenzie. I'm just wondering, it said in the packet that there was going to be 2 24-unit buildings and then 1 30-unit. Do you have any idea how many bedrooms in the apartments? Do you guys have that laid out yet?
Generally speaking, yes. It's a majority of 2-bedroom units.
Okay.
With a smattering of a few 1-bedrooms and a few 3-bedrooms.
Okay.
Mostly it's just a byproduct of the way the geometries work out. And so it's also 2-bedrooms seem to be the most sought after commodity in the marketplace.
Is there any plans to have more than 4 accessible units in the properties?
We will be having 2 per building at the present ratio. And that depends also on the sort of funding sources that the proponent pursues that may offer additional support for additional barrier-free units.
That's great. And I mean, I know planning had mentioned that the first phase you were going to start in spring of 24 if everything gets approved. Any idea what your projected timelines would be for each phase?
They'll be about a 1-year build each.
Okay.
And the intention is to do them in rapid succession.
Okay. No, that's great. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any other questions, Mr. McKenzie. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the project? And I'll ask for the third time if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of 460 Milford Road project. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. I do want to say, though, Mr. Seal, appreciate you being here this evening. It's always great to have the developer with us, just in case. There's always questions. So appreciate your presence. Councillor, I have, so is you have some questions for staff? Councillor Stewart, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not so much a question, just very few, as a matter of fact, probably a handful of projects since I've been sitting in this seat that I've been very impressed with. The homework, the background, the project itself, the location, the fact that the developer has knocked on doors, had town halls, everything about this proposal to me seems like this is the way our developers should be approaching projects. This is an easy one for the city. It's an easy one for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lowe, over to you.
Ditto with him. Greg said, but I'm moving staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you. I'll take a seconder on that. Councillor Killen. Councillor Radwan, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just a question through you to staff. I just wanted to see, it looks like from the drawings that there's like 3 entrances going in, but probably only one that fire would access. Am I correct?
You are correct. It would just be that one access on the undeveloped city road that would connect to the 2 existing homes and then the access. for
Okay.
the new
And I
entrance.
think that's probably fairly standard.
It is fairly standard, especially for that area. The adjacent city-owned land to the north has some drainage issues, or previously did, so there was no.
The only other thing that I wanted to comment on is just mostly procedurally. I think it would be really helpful for council to not just know that letters were sent out 100 meters, but how many letters went out. Because if I see that there was 100 homes hit and we only got 1 letter versus 2 homes hit and we only got 1 letter, it makes a big difference on, you know, how much engagement is there. So anyway, just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's it for you, Ava. I will say, as commenting on it, I've seen this model, I guess when I was in Halifax, where the parking's sort of all at the front doors. And so that whole area gets lit. It's not at the back doors. It's not sort of out of the way and hidden. So I like all the parking out front. I find that safer. So, yeah, nice concept. Impressed. All right, so I have a mover, City Clerk. I already have that, I think.
Yes, we have a mover and
seconder
seconder for the
for the
first
first motion.
reading of
Okay,
the
so that's
bylaw.
approved, first reading by title. Okay, so on the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the city of St. John. And we need one more motion for second reading by title.
Second reading by title, Councillor Lowe and Councillor Norton on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the city of St. John.
Okay, thank you. You're on your way, sort of. All right, next item, City Clerk.
Next is the last of the public hearings. It's item 9.3, and it's for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment with Planning Advisory Committee recommendation and staff presentation for 10 Crane Mountain Road.
Director Dobbelstein, over to you for the intro.
Thank you, Your Worship. The third public hearing this evening is an application from Hughes Surveys and Consultants for a rezoning of lands adjacent to the regional landfill. The application is seeking to rezone the site from rural, RU, to pit and quarry, PQ, to allow for aggregate extraction for the exclusive use of the landfill. Staff and the Planning Advisory Committee are recommending approval of the application with Section 59 conditions, and I'm pleased to turn things over to Senior Planner Mark Reed for the staff presentation.
Thank you, David. The application before you this evening covers portions of 2 parcels adjacent to the regional landfill. The applicant is seeking to rezone an 11.3 hectare portion of the site from rural to pit and quarry. That would provide for aggregate extraction and an access road, and the extracted aggregate would be used in landfill operations. The existing site is shown here in red on the map. The existing excavation area is essentially the inverted C in the southern portion of the site, and then the access road comes up and heads towards the north and east. along an existing access road to where it would tie into the existing landfill property. Areas surrounding the site are wooded and undeveloped. The nearest residential dwelling unit is over 2 kilometers away, and it's off to the right of the photo here. If you can see how there's some lots subdivided along the southern part of Accomack Backland Road and the southern part of the drawing. Here's a close-up of the excavation area of the site. There's an existing gravel bank on the site that was previously excavated. As well, there's an existing access road coming in from Crane Mountain Road. This is another shot here of a portion of the access road adjacent to the landfill, and a shot of the existing gravel deposit on the proposed excavation site, and another one. The municipal plan has the area designated as rural resource. The plan does provide for policy with respect to pits and quarries in the rural resource designation. It conforms to policy LU 96 related to the compatibility of aggregate extraction with adjacent lands. It's over 2 kilometers away from the closest dwelling unit. The access and haul routes are situated such that there is no impact on adjacent public roadways or residences, and there's sufficient buffering provided between adjacent land uses. In addition, the existing context of the area is one of rural and developed lands, with the exception of the existing landfill, so staff are of the opinion the proposal conforms to the city's municipal plan. The zoning of the site is currently rural. It will require a rezoning to pit and quarry. The pit and quarry zone standards are met with respect to the excavation area. Pits are only permitted within, on the site as it's within 600 meters of a public water supply. The existing haul road will also be zoned pit and quarry, and there will be no use of public roadways. PAC did approve some variances related to the location and the separation of the existing roadway from the property line that would come into effect should the rezoning be approved. Staff are recommending 3 Section 59 conditions. One is limiting the use of the excavated material to the regional landfill for their operations. The second is that access to the site be via the existing haul road, and that Accomack Backland Road not be used for transport of the material. And the third condition would be the applicant providing proof with the development excavation permit application that all necessary provincial approvals have been obtained. In terms of engagement, letters were sent to landowners within 100 meters, and notice of the public hearing was posted on the city's website. The applicant Hughes Surveys also did communication to area landowners, and no appearances at the PAC meeting aside from the applicant, and no letters were received regarding the application. The staff and PAC recommendation are aligned to rezone the site and impose the recommended Section 59 conditions. And as I mentioned before, the committee also approved a variance that would come into effect subject on the approval of the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I will open the public hearing, and I'll ask if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the application. Please come forward and give us your name and your address.
Your Worship, my name is John Doubt. I live in Mona Heights.
Okay, online.
I'm also a member of the board of the Crane Mountain Land Enhancement Inc. We made a presentation to the council. I'm not really opposed to this application. I am concerned due to the proximity of the site to the landfill. And one of the issues that we did raise when we presented to council in November was the state of the bedrock. I didn't hear in the conditions anything about if there's going to be any blasting. If there was any, I would like to know if there was any action taken regarding whether there's blasting required, and if there's any conditions on the application to eliminate any blasting. And maybe that has been taken into consideration, I don't know. So it's more of a question than a
Okay, we'll certainly ask that. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions other than that for our guest? Okay, so we'll wait. When we get to the questions for staff, we'll get you to come up then, Mark. But I'll ask again if there's anyone else that would like to speak against the application. Oh, you have a question? Sorry, Paula, I didn't see your light on.
That's
Councillor
okay.
Radwan?
I do have a question for you, sir. I just wanted to ask you if there's a reason why you were concerned whether or not there was going to be blasting there. Is there any reason that you have for that?
Yes, Councillor, there is. Because of the state of the bedrock under the landfill, there is a concern if there is any blasting that would disrupt the bedrock, that could disrupt the landfill. It could cause leakage in the leachate. There could be some significant impact on, essentially on the whole residential area.
How do you know that? Have you had any environmental engineers that have given you that advice?
One of the things that the Crane Mountain Landfill, Crane Mountain Enhancement Inc. has done is we have had some bedrock studies, and it goes back to the original approval of this Crane Mountain landfill, that the bedrock is known to be somewhat fractured. The whole approval was a cause for concern. It was approved, it's gone ahead, everything seems to be okay. There are monitoring wells, the wells are being monitored on a regular basis, both around the landfill and some residences as well. So it is being monitored properly. We have no concerns over that. But if there is any blasting which disrupts in any way the bedrock, which it could do, then it could cause leakage.
Okay.
It is actually my understanding, and I have talked to Mark McLeod, who's the general manager of the landfill. He seems to think that it is all extractable without any blasting. If that's the case, that's fine.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the application. And I'll ask for a third time if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the application for 10 Crane Mountain Road. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application? Come forward and give us your name for the record, please.
As your worship, members of Common Council, Rick Turner with Hughes Surveys and Consultants, here on behalf of F. Andrew Simpson Contracting and Simcoe Developments, the two owners. Certainly in agreement with the staff recommendation. Mr. Reed's opening here doesn't leave me a lot to say, but I will add that this was really a great opportunity for both the landfill and for Simpson's. The landfill, because there could be considerable savings in cover material, and Simpson's have a purchaser right there, so win-win, and a win when it comes to cost, and the landfill is a win for us all if there's savings. For neighborhood engagement, I sent out approximately 20 letters. I looked at the 100 meters and it wasn't capturing much. I extended it out to 500. In the invitation, it was for people, if they had questions or concerns, to contact myself, or I put contact the planning division. I received one phone call, chatted with the fellow for a while, and he said, I don't see anything wrong with it. If I do anything, I'll send a letter of, approval, but I guess he hasn't sent that in. Any questions, I'll try to address them.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Turner from Hughes Survey? Okay, I do. Councillor Norton, sorry, Councillor.
Through you to Mr. Turner. We've been down this road before, obviously, as it relates to the extraction of clay deposits to extend the life of some of the cells on the landfill in a previous application, maybe before this council, maybe it was in the last council, I believe. And there was lots of participation as it related to to that particular assignment. With this one, you're absolutely right. There's quite a large berth between this project and any of the surrounding residential developments. But can you speak to the concern that's been brought forward as it relates to the possibility of extracting the material without having to blast, or is blasting something that's imminent or yet to be decided?
Yes, Your Worship, the intention at this point in time is not to be doing any blasting. Blasting in this area, because of the proximity of the watershed, creates complications which they'd prefer to avoid. And the most they'd be doing some of the pit run material. They may use a crusher in some instances. As far as blasting, it certainly has not been a consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. As the scope of the project right now, would it require, or does it require, any further environmental impact assessment or any further environmental impact study in the absence of blasting? If it's just strictly, strictly, I guess, just a extracting it through excavation, is there much more that needs to be done from an EIA standpoint?
We've got to conduct watercourse alteration permits. What that would be is an application. Our intention is not to be diverting any way watercourses or wetlands, but the intention of those applications will be to show, here's the sensitive areas mapped, and these are off limits.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. You may sense where I'm going with this one. We've, after a few years of doing this, sometimes we get into a horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse here. So you're probably sensing where I have no reservation in principle with the project, but we sometimes approve the permitting of a project before that study has come through fruition through the provincial body that helps regulate that. And I'll use this opportunity to say it now, that I'm always supportive of project proponents that bring those permits forward. And I know maybe our provincial counterparts take exception to that. Bring those permits forward first to let us know that the environmental impact is safe and secure prior to giving consent around this table. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Turner, that's it for questions for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application for 10 Crane Mountain Road for the last time. Seeing none, then I will close the public hearing. Does anyone have any questions for staff? Mr. Reid? Looks like, Councillor Radwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mr. Reid, I first wanted to ask if this site is zoned, then can there be extraction of materials there forever? Is there a limit on that? How does that work?
Your Worship, through you to the councillor, the limit that they would tend to hit in an aggregate extraction would be the economic availability of the material. On this one, what we're proposing as a condition is that we limit the scope of the extraction to what they're going to use it for. So it's going to be limited to use by the landfill. So it wouldn't be a commercial pit or quarry where somebody could, call up the operator and order like 20 truckloads of gravel to be trucked to a construction site or something like that. So that's a way that, would intend to basically restrict that and, protect the public. In terms of the material there, they've outlined and had some geotechnical surveys done that they have determined that there is, a sufficient amount of material for the next few years for their operations with respect to cover material and frost protection and some berm work on site. So.
And I don't know if you can give any sort of context to this, but I know that that Anyway, I know that it was said before that there's no plan to blast on the site, but then if there was in the future, they would have to apply, but would there be any look into whether or not it would have any, negative impacts on the bedrock there? Like,
So
I
there
mean, I
would
don't
be,
know. It feels like a provincial question that I'm trying to ask you, but I just want to be sure that it's safe to use the site for this.
Your worship, through you to the councillor in the second question. The pit and quarry zone permits essentially two main uses. It permits a pit, which is a case like this where they're proposing to take essentially loose material out of a bank. So they can go in with a front end loader or an excavator and load it. The material can just be scooped out. They can screen it or crush it on site or do some further processing. If they're blasting, then it becomes what's called a quarry. Now, a quarry is also permitted in the PQ zone, but there's a further restriction in the zone that a quarry cannot be within 600 meters of a public water supply. And there's sections of the site that are within 600 meters of a public water supply where that material is being taken out. So there's a prohibition there under the bylaw, but that is a variable standard. So if they did if they wanted to pull material out that required blasting, they'd have to get a variance from the Planning Advisory Committee.
Okay, so they'd have to come back here.
Yeah, so there's a bit of protection for the public on that one, and they would also then be there'd be some additional provincial conditions with respect to quarry permits and approvals to operate as well.
The other question that I had, if I have time, I don't know if anybody else has any though. Am I okay, Mayor? Was really about the lake. It is fairly close to lake. Of course, we've got water all around us though. So is there any concern that we should have about them just doing regular extraction with the lake being that close?
We circulated this to the Provincial Department of Environment, and
Oh,
there wasn't
okay.
any concern expressed with the lake. What they did express is there, could be potentially a concern with unmapped wetlands, but that's no different than, any other site in this area or any other site across from the city. A developer for a particular project could run into, an unmapped wetland, in which case they would have to go through and get the necessary provincial permits for the wetland and watercourse alteration.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mark, I've got a quick question myself. I saw that in the application that it was circulated to the New Brunswick Department of Environment and Local Government, but I'm just curious when it talks about the history. It says in 1997 there was an application, and it says at the time it was designated as open space, and it was in the municipal plan zoned as park or P. So did that change in 12 with Plan SJ?
Yes, that changed in Plan SJ. The designation went to rural resource from the open space designation, and then
Oh,
the
okay.
zoning of the site changed over to rural.
So rural resource was open
Yeah.
space
Yeah,
before.
there was a bit of
Okay.
a tighter, we had what I can understand from the mapping that was done when we did Plan SJ, it was quite a while ago, because the 97 report would have been based on the 1973 plan. We really didn't have good mapping at the time, good air photos. So when we did the current municipal plan, we were able to snap those open space areas and park and natural areas closer into those 30-meter buffers around those watercourse and wetland features.
Right. Okay, well, that's great. All right, that looks like that's it for you. Thank you so much for questions. So City Clerk, I'll take the motions.
This is the same as previous, two motions, one for first reading by title.
First reading by title. Councillor Lowe. Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, and I'll take a motion to approve second reading by title. Councillor Stewart and Councillor Norton on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Next item, City Clerk.
Next is item 12.2. It's a CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund City of St. John application report.
Director Dobbelstein, back to you. It's your night for intros.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're putting you through our paces tonight. Tonight, we're pleased to present some information about the city's application for the $4 billion Housing Accelerator Fund offered by CMHC, which provides incentive funding to local governments to encourage initiatives that are aimed at increasing housing supply across the country. And this fund's objective is to accelerate the supply of housing across Canada, resulting in at least 100,000 more housing units permitted than would have otherwise occurred without the program. A successful funding application from the City of St. John could significantly accelerate the development of residential units across the entire spectrum, as mentioned by our acting CEO earlier today. Staff have been developing a robust action plan for this application based on the city's existing development trends, our updated housing needs assessment, our own population projections and census data, as well as Council's recently approved Affordable Housing Action Plan. And this briefing tonight is to provide you an overview, as well as an overview to the public on the proposed actions in the city's application, and I'm pleased to introduce the city's new housing manager, Andrew Reid, to provide you with an overview of this exciting opportunity.
Andy, over to you.
Thank you, Director Dobbelstein. Your Worship, Mayors of Council, I'm excited to be here tonight to present to you some details on our Housing Accelerator Fund City of St. John application. The Housing Accelerator Fund, as I think Director Dobbelstein mentioned, it's a $4 billion fund created by CMHC, intended to result in 100,000 more housing units nationwide. Funding, unlike traditional programs, provides direct funding to local authorities over a 3-year period to introduce transformational initiatives that will increase housing supply. The portal for applications is now open and will remain open until August 18th. So we're preparing our portal entry currently. The St. John context, we know that housing starts need to increase in St. John. Just to meet our growth targets, they need to double. And historically, the housing starts haven't kept pace with this new uptick in demand. So if action's not taken through such initiatives like the Housing Accelerator Fund, housing will be further out of reach for many residents. The timeline on municipal actions related to housing, this is just to remind that it hasn't been a great amount of time that the municipality's been taking a targeted approach to housing. We began down this road about 2 years ago in January 2021, introducing our Affordable Housing Action Plan and the Staff Work Plan. There have been a variety of initiatives here you can see in the slide, and today we're looking to submit our Accelerator Fund application, which I became aware of that opportunity in March. So it's been a collaborative effort to date, interdepartmentally, with staff, with Envision, and it's going with CMHC, with the province, and it's going to continue need to be a collaborative effort with the community. We know the city, we're one actor within the housing system, so there's more to come, more information to come with our partners on this. But the opportunity before us, we've estimated to meet the minimum growth targets required of the program would mean a city request in the area of $15 million spread out over a 3-year period. To achieve that target, we would be looking at introducing 8 initiatives over the course of 2024 to 2026. And I just did want to highlight again that these initiatives don't reinvent the wheel. They look at initiatives already in our Affordable Housing Action Plan, 39 initiatives in that plan, and the 10-year strategic plan. So to dig into it, the first initiative would be looking at the North End Secondary Plan, expediting a revitalization plan for that neighborhood, which would consist of a community improvement plan and infrastructure modeling and roadmap for improvement. The second initiative consists of targeting purpose-built rentals specifically. So we coined this as the Housing Concierge Program. And that consists of a combination of enhanced one-stop development shop approach to navigating approvals and hurdles, developments that meet this criteria are facing the pipeline, as well as incentives, financial stimulus to achieve those desired building forms. The third initiative targets specifically the mid-density housing forms, as well as the smaller scale things like accessory dwelling units and garden suites. So through this initiative, we'd be looking at introducing pre-approved schematic plans and coupling that to, again, with incentives, potentially fee reductions during the duration of the plan. As well, looking at, on the other end, design guidelines and builder engagement to support well-designed neighborhoods. The fourth initiative is specifically targeting how to capitalize the affordable housing sector and seek to create more deeply affordable units in St. John. This will take ongoing coordination with the nonprofit sector specifically, as well with NB Housing. And this initiative would primarily look at replenishing and improving the efficiency of our affordable housing grant fund. So there could be a considerable top up here if we are successful. The fifth initiative looks at city-owned and underutilized land. We know that land is a key lever to making a project happen. And this initiative would seek to maximize land for redevelopment opportunity. The sixth initiative consists of comprehensive zoning bylaw reform as it relates to housing. So that could be looking at major corridors for increasing density, as well as in neighborhoods. The seventh initiative is an e-permitting program. So that initiative would include efforts to implement a new state-of-the-art e-permitting software to enable more streamlined and efficient permit reviews and approvals. The initiative would result in systemic improvement to building planning and enforcement permitting that would greatly improve efficiency and customer service. The final initiative, governance reform, would be to follow through and undertake research on potential governance reform options, i.e. a municipal housing entity that will provide a vehicle for the ongoing implementation of the Affordable Housing Action Plan, as well as the long-term systemic impacts that will drive a response to our current housing situation crisis. This initiative will investigate potential options, but as well take steps towards implementation of the preferred option. The outcomes of this Housing Accelerator Fund application, we know that more housing leads to more livable, vibrant neighborhoods. So our growth target on average to meet the program parameters, what we'd be seeking is to target 425 new permitted units each year over the next 3 years. It's a fairly ambitious plan, so that would result in an increase approximately 50% of our current growth rate if you look at our 5-year historic average for new permitted units. But it is a doable, achievable target. Overall, this application would result in accelerating the implementation of the municipal plan, city's strategic plan, and affordable housing action plan. So it really just appears to be a very great opportunity for us. This recommendation is simply to receive and file the presentation. We did hear earlier about the recommendation coming out of committee of the whole for the application. But I'll leave it there and thank you very much. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Andy? Councillor Killen, over to you.
No questions. Just want to thank the team. This has been an ongoing project, as you could see from the timeline there. So as just on behalf of the Growth Committee, and you have done such a great job, Andy, and thanks for stepping up into this new role. And I know I was featured in TJ about the governance stuff, Emma, so I'm happy to see that that's on paper here so that we can see how the municipal housing entity ideally is going to move forward. So I really appreciate that, and thank you on behalf of the Growth Committee.
Councillor Radwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mr. Reid. I don't have any questions for you. I just wanted to first thank Chair Killen from Growth and the whole Growth team for doing all the extra time to looking out for all this. It's fantastic. Everybody in the public should be looking at this one. I think a couple of my favorite pieces was us being able to look at the North End neighborhood plan, because when I have a vision over there of what I see like huge potential over there. And I think once we get in there, we're going to have more developers coming in, and they're just going to get excited about coming to St. John to develop. And the other piece that I was really enjoying was, of course, the affordable housing piece, because I really think that we need to be trying to break down barriers for like those not-for-profits that are going to do affordable housing. And if we're going to get money in the hands of people, it's into those not-for-profits to keep up the affordable housing. So thanks to staff, it's tons of work. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll just make a couple of comments, Andy. Under initiative number 3, unlock gentle density, we've got faster lot creation, pre-approved schematic plans, grants and fees reimbursement, design guidelines, builder engagement. I'd also like to have some guidelines from the city as far as like how do we then integrate gentle density into neighborhoods, because we do see some resistance to that. So it would be nice to know what best practices are on that and how we could help facilitate that, and then maybe that would help offer a more predictable outcome for some of the applications as well as we go forward. So it'd be nice for us because we want to be consistent in our message as well. So, it just makes it a little bit easier versus trying to figure out from one application or another application how they could be different, and maybe you'll end up with a different outcome. So it would be nice to sort of solidify consistency for us. And the other thing that I will say, and Councillor Killen mentioned this to me, she said that this wasn't on our work plan. And, so, and now we have this, so there has been a lot of work put in it by staff, and that we do appreciate that, because it has been, we had to pivot as a team, and so does staff, to get the work done. So do appreciate it. It's not always easy, but it's a great project, and it's a great presentation. There's a lot of goodies in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll take a motion for receive and file. Councillor Killen and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk. Thank you, Andy.
The final item is 13.1, and this is from the Finance Committee, the 2023-2032 General Fund Long-Term Financial Plan.
Over to you, Councillor Sullivan, as the Chair of Finance, for the intro.
Thank you, Your Worship. For the public, on behalf of your Finance Committee of Councillor Sicky, Radwin, Norton, and Her Worship, I'd like to introduce CFO Fudge, who will be introducing the financial plan that never ends. Because, having a long-term 10-year financial plan, one of the important pieces of our proud financial plan is the fact that we are always adjusting and reviewing our financial plan. So what you have before you tonight is your recommendation from your Finance Committee, who has seen and briefed with our staff in detail, but it is important enough that we bring details to council and the public as well. So without further ado, I'll hand things over to CFO Fudge.
Thank you, through your worship, to the council. It's a tough act to follow, that Housing Accelerator Fund application, and the great work from the Growth Committee and the Growth team. But I'm equally pleased to be here before you this evening with the second edition of the city's long-term financial plan, which was unanimously approved by your Finance Committee, and it's being recommended this evening for council approval and adoption. And I think the combination of the audited consolidated financial statements that you approved earlier tonight, along with the city's 10-year financial plan, sends a strong message to investors, whether it be current residents or future residents, whether it be current businesses or future businesses. And the message is the city is a strong place to invest in. St. John is fiscally responsible, we're stable, we're growing, and you should be at ease to invest your capital in a place to work, live, and play. So the 10-year, as the chair indicated, the 10-year financial plan is a living document. You're not approving a budget this evening. I want to be clear with that. With the adoption of the plan, you're approving a financial strategy. It's a roadmap. I know we use that word quite often, but it is a roadmap that sets the framework for which we financially strategize. So through a policy adopted by this council, we are actually obligated to review the assumptions of the plan with the Finance Committee on an annual basis to determine whether there are significant changes that merit updating or refreshing the plan. And those changes could be economic changes, council strategies, regulatory changes, funding changes. So we look at all those things. And the plan really is, I guess, premised in guiding principles. And the guiding principles of the plan are sustainability, flexibility, and to reduce vulnerability. And I promise this is the longest time I'll speak on any single slide. I want to elaborate on that. So sustainability means the ability to provide and maintain services and infrastructure without unplanned disruptive cuts to service or unplanned increases to tax rates. That's important to the community. Flexibility means you can change debt levels or tax rates to meet your financial obligations while ensuring intergenerational equity, equally important. So in other words, you're not maxing out your capacity. And finally, reducing vulnerability means reducing dependency on external funding sources that you do not control, reducing risk of relying on funding to meet financial obligations and commitments, including delivery of services that could at any time be significantly altered because you have no control over those funds. So governance and policy is the key ingredient that makes your financial plan work. It includes a suite of council-approved best practice financial policies, a formal set of financial targets, key performance indicators approved by council, and a transparent annual reporting framework and scorecard. Now I'll fly. So let's talk about our successes. We are following a debt management plan. Debt reduction is gradual, as you can see on the chart on the slide, because while you take action to reduce debt, it cannot be at the expense of investing in your infrastructure needs in order to be a community that is growth ready. I've learned that term from the Growth Committee as well. It takes a disciplined and consistent approach to action a debt management plan. And on the slide that you see is the general fund debt performance. And by the end of 2023, we will have reduced the city's debenture debt in the general fund by $32 million over a 7-year period. So that's 27% over a 7-year period in the general fund, or about 4% per year in debt reduction. And by reducing debt, it means you are spending less of your operating budget on funding debt and more of your operating budget on funding services that are important to the community. This slide shows the general fund debt service ratio, which is the percentage of your operating budget that funds debt. And we are forecasting for the first time since I've had the privilege of being your chief financial officer, having a debt service ratio below 9% in 2023. And you'll see future targets in our future slides here. And we are also in a strong position to weather any unexpected changes during the year in our operating budget because the city has a healthy operating reserve fund. This graph illustrates the importance of having the operating reserve fund. As you can see, the dip in the reserve fund in the year 2021, which was to help the city get through the global pandemic without having to take any drastic financial actions. This graph really shows why reserve funds are necessary to mitigate risk. Finally, our capital reserve funds, which we have used strategically for growth initiatives such as land reserves, a North Depot investment, a grant for the St. John Theatre Company, investment in curbside recycling infrastructure, industrial parks strategic planning, and the big increase between 2022 and 2023 you see in funding of the reserve is our plan to fund the city's future catalytic comprehensive recreation arts facility. What you won't see on this slide is we have other capital reserves for fleet replacement program, a computer replacement program. That's not part of this slide, but we've had that program in for a long time, and it's a really good program for asset management. And this slide, I'll give credit to our finance chair. But when we kickstart our first long-term financial plan, St. John had the highest tax rate in the province of New Brunswick. And as you can see on the slide, we no longer can claim that title. And of the 8 cities in New Brunswick, St. John has the 4th lowest residential property tax rate a significant improvement in our competitiveness. So we have many policies. I will go quickly through them, and I know the taglines for each policy is what grabs your attention. But the detail in each policy is really important. I promise I'm not going to go through that detail in this update, but it really is the glue that holds this financial plan together. So just very quickly, we have an operating budget policy, which essentially means don't spend more than you make. We have a debt management policy, which is borrow wisely. We have an operating and capital reserve policy, which means save your money for a rainy day. We have an asset management policy, which is take good care of your property. We have a wage escalation policy, which we monitor take control of your expenses before they control you. We have a capital budget policy, which we call fix the roof before buying living room furniture. And then we have a couple of new policies. We do have the budget monitoring policy, which is keep track of your money. That's why we're here today, is the budget monitoring policy and the long-term financial plan policy. Both those policies require us to continuously monitor our financial situation. We have an ABC reporting policy, which is make sure your dependent achieves results at university. So we're getting scorecards on a regular basis through the Growth Committee, through Public Safety Committee, on the results of our agency boards and commissions. We have an investment policy which protects taxpayers' money. And then we recently had a grant policy adopted, which is, we call it Pay It Forward. We have a number of other financial policies that set the foundation for governance. I'm not going to name them all, but you've approved some of them this year, such as the travel policy. But other changes recommended to any of our policies require 2/3 votes of council to change any of these policies. So there's very strong governance within the financial plan. And just quickly, this slide, this gives you an example of why it was time to refresh the long-term plan. You'll see some of the major changes just in the last few years. We have a strategic plan that now informs us. Really our 2019-2020 plan was informed by austerity and restructuring. Now we're looking at financial excellence and actioning our strategic plan. But we have differences in economic assumptions with inflation, interest rates. We've had very good tax-based growth, and we've had some local government reform. And of course, we have new challenges, economic challenges with housing crisis, supply chain, energy prices. So we had to make some significant changes in our assumptions in the plan. So the financial plan, as was with the first edition, presents two scenarios. The first being a base case, which focuses on modest growth and prioritizes funding council's priorities in the strategic plan. The financial goals and targets modeled are based on those assumptions in the base case. And as was in the first plan, we also propose in the plan a stretch case, which assumes higher tax-based growth that allows the strategic objectives of council to be accelerated, as well as a tax rate reduction plan. So the base case targets were approved by the Finance Committee. This is really a status quo model from that perspective. It's structurally balanced. It's the same targets that were in the first financial plan for the stretch model, which is basically flat, consistent tax rate of $1.62 until we have our pension payments drop off. And then we'll see $1.57. So that's under the assumption of a 3% tax-based growth scenario. And the assumptions of the base case are on the slide. I'm not going to go through them all, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to please ask them. And this is just a comparison of the base case tax rate objective or targets in our 2030 plan, the first edition, compared to the tax rate target in our 2032 plan that's being proposed tonight. So we were, at the time, thinking it was going to be tough times ahead, and we had a 10-year $78.5 tax rate that we were forecasting in the base case of the first plan. This base case is targeting $1.57 by the end of the plan. And with these assumptions in the base case, you can see the plan in the base case is to keep the tax rate stable, but also ensures that we fund our strategic plan objectives. With an average investment annually, once those pension plan payments fall off, of $2 to $3 million of additional investment into the strategic plan. But the priorities of the years 2023 to 2027 within the $1.62 tax rate would also be prioritized based on the strategic plan. So the next two slides, I won't go through them in detail, but they do provide a clear picture of where we were, where we are, and where we are going under a base case scenario. So with respect to the performance reporting on this slide, there's 4 columns. The first column is the key performance indicator when we first started the long-term financial plan in 2020. So that's where we were in 2020. The second column is where we stand in 2023. The third column was the base case target in the first 10-year long-term financial plan, so as I'm referring to as the first edition. And the fourth column is the proposed update 10-year target in the base case for the plan that's before you tonight. And there's significant improvement, as you can see on each of those indicators. Then with the stretch case, the main difference in the stretch case is the assumption that the city meets annual tax base growth of 5% per year. Base case is 3% per year, stretch case is 5% per year. If that situation was to occur, if we applied all that extra funding to tax rate reduction, you would have a $1.31 tax rate, but that's not what we're proposing in this plan. What we're proposing in this plan is setting aside 5 cents of the tax rate, which is approximately $5 to $6 million each year, if we achieve this annual growth, to accelerate the achievement of the city's strategic objectives, which would forecast a stretch case tax rate at the same time of $1.36.7 by 2032. This strategy would allow the city to achieve a $1.36.7 tax rate, meet the strategic plan objective of tax rate competitiveness, which is in the plan. Given the odds that if we're getting this growth, other cities are reducing their tax rate as well. So we're, to ensure that we're competitive, while at the same time adding over that period $41 million of extra funding capacity to accelerate the strategic plan. So this is, again, just a comparison of the first plan stretch case tax rate target of $1.57 to the new target by 2032 of $1.37. So it's a 20-cent difference between the two plans. And again, this slide is showing the stretch case targets from the old plan in 2030 to the improvements in the targets in the 2032 plan. And again, every financial indicator is vastly improved from the old plan based on what we've modeled. So with that, we believe the next couple slides is just really the story there is we believe our assumptions in the model are reasonable, given the tax-based results we've received in the past few years, combined with some cautionary views on the unconditional grant is unknown. What's that going to? We know it's going to most likely go down. We know there's some difficult economic assumptions that we have to weather over the next few years. We also know that over the last 10 years, we've had more stagnant growth than high growth. So we are being cautious using the two assumptions of 3% and 5%. But we will monitor it, and if it merits refreshing the plan sooner than a year, we will come back and we'll refresh the plan sooner than a year. This is, again, a living document. I think we talked about that already. So in conclusion, the updated long-term financial plan will ensure the city is successful funding its 10-year strategic plan, as it is the primary goal that informs this plan. The long-term financial plan targets ensuring the city's financial health continues to improve with lower debt, balanced budgets, lower infrastructure deficits, competitive tax rates, and adequate reserve levels. And the long-term financial plan targets ensuring we meet our guiding principles of being sustainable, flexible, and having low vulnerability in our fiscal health. And with that, the recommendation is for Common Council to approve the 2023-2032 long-term financial plan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's a couple of questions for you. Councillor Ogden's up first.
Commissioner Fudge, I'd just like to thank you and Councillor Sullivan and Mr. Levine for taking care of our finances. I want the public to know how important this is and what a great job you people have done. by just looking at, when you talk about the fund that we get from the province, that over 60 years, it's probably in the billions of dollars. I tried to work it out one day, I couldn't. Probably in the billions of dollars that St. John lost on tax dollars that are generated here that we still lose because the tax system is still the same thing as it was 60 years ago. We keep hearing talk about municipal reform, but we haven't really dealt with the tax system that would benefit St. John. It doesn't affect Moncton and Fredericton because of the industrial tax. Actually, I think, I've tried to figure it out, and I think we're the only city in the country that this is not affected. So you doing this great job is a really, I mean, citizens should be really, really happy about what we're doing in-house. So if we can do something with that provincial tax system, which we've been promised a number of times, St. Johners should never blame the city for the loss of wealth that's in the city. And we lost 5,000 federal jobs. St. John Shipbuilding was the major one, but we lost 7 federal departments when Moncton picked up major federal departments. So when we hear these comparisons, St. John's done a great job with the wealth that we have, but we have to do more. And we have the lowest number by far of university students in Atlantic Canada, and university students are mostly about 60% paid for by provincial taxes. And again, our provincial taxes end up in Fredericton, and we don't get to control them. Thus, the small number of university students, 2,000, and the average in the cities are between 9 and 32,000. So we're really hindered by the provincial and federal government's lack of wealth that they used to spend here. And I think what you people have done is a fabulous job. You know, we have to keep working on beautifying our city and the poverty that we have here. But it's frustrating to see the wealth that goes to other cities. And yet we do such a great job that we should be complimented and given that wealth back. So I just want to thank you. And I want the citizens to know what a great, great job you guys do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Killen, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Commissioner Fudge. So some highlights for me were definitely the growth readiness piece and how you provide the stretch cases so that there is sort of like this breadth of ability for us to go for golds or at least maintain. And also like the common language that you're using. So often in government, it's a little high level. So it was nice to see those sort of abridged versions that you had there for all the policies. So I'm wondering about the advocacy piece because the tax rate, as we found out last year, it was on us as a council to lower the tax rate because everyone's assessments had gone up so much. I don't see any mention here of what would be sort of advocating for a better multiplier or how you might sort of work with the province to help us out with this. Because as we know, it's not necessarily St. John's fault that we have the tax rate we do. So any thought on that or how we would include that in the long-term plan?
Yeah, absolutely, and it actually addresses Councillor Ogden's question as well somewhat. It's a good question. The plan actually does assume status quo in terms of local governance reform. So
Right.
we actually achieve what we're advocating for, which is entering the provincial tax room, having more control of classes of customers, and having more control of our rates. There's further upside in our financial plan.
Right.
So it's a conservative plan from that perspective, and if we are successful in achieving those objectives, then we would be coming back to refresh this plan with a better financial plan.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lowe, over to you.
Kevin, everything's great, and you've done a great job, and Gary done a great job. Industry 1.7, like we're an industry surrounded totally. And we talked about equipment and we talked about different things over the year. Will we continue in the next 10 years to push? We're the lowest. 1.7 is probably the lowest and one of the lowest in industrial cities in Canada. Sydney, Nova Scotia is higher than we are. Everybody's mostly higher than we are. But is this based on staying at 1.7 for the entire duration?
Just similar to, through your worship to the councillor, just similar as the last question, it is. But certainly, we're advocating to enter into that space. So if you think of last year, non-residential customers, heavy industrial customers, through the 15% property tax reduction, received about a 33-cent reduction in their overall property tax bill. When the city went from 1.5 to 1.7 in the multiplier, we entered into about 19 cents of that 33 cents. So overall, those organizations still received a lower overall property tax bill. What we've been advocating since 2015 is that property tax should be the exclusive domain of municipalities. And we do not want to increase taxes on anybody, but we would like to enter the space that the province is in to the extent we can. And with that, we could also reduce our reliance on the unconditional grant, for which makes us vulnerable. We want to reduce the vulnerability of the city of that revenue stream.
But we'll continue to move ahead and push to move the 1.7 upward, correct?
Yeah, we'll continuously benchmark that 1.7 and make sure that we make adjustments that are reflective of our objectives. Yep.
Councillor Sullivan?
Thanks, Your Worship. Really to pile on to answer, I think, the same question that was just asked 3 times. This is the financial plan based on everything we are sure of that we have right now. Other work that's going on within our council and within the finance department includes a request and conversation for more tax classes. Right now, we have a slider that basically it's residential and non-residential. So what happened last year in the assessment, just a reminder for those who are watching, our residential assessment was over 12%, but our non-residential assessment increase was about 3.25%. And then when you take into the math of the room that the province got out of and the slider and all of that together, it meant on the whole, residents paid, correct me if I'm wrong here, Kevin, residents paid about 7% more than the previous year, and non-residential on the whole actually paid less. And so we have a request in, one, to have more tax classes so that we aren't taxing heavy industry using the same multiplier that we would tax a corner store. And we also have a request in a conversation going on about the ends of those sliders. The proof, the data we got in the audits earlier, the long-term financial plan you're seeing now, our track record over the past several years should be showing to our provincial partners who control these that we are very responsible with the public's money. You can trust us to do responsible things. And first of all, I should say thank you for the sliders. This is new, and we didn't have this before, but we don't need those posts on the end. You know, we aren't going to price anybody out so they don't want to come to St. John, but we do want, this is a pretty simple way to have fair taxation if you give us more tax classes and those goalposts on the end. So that conversation continues. We've had some letters back and forth with the former municipalities minister, and there is a meeting forum coming in the fall that municipalities have been invited to have more discussion with regards to municipal tax reform. So for sure, we can assure council, our staff are all over it, your finance committee's on it, work is still getting done. And just like the assumptions we had the big inflation, we had COVID, it was time to update this. With municipal reform, I would expect us to be coming back with another updated plan.
Excellent, and with 3 seconds to spare. Deputy, over to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Worship. Kevin, this is, like, every time you get to the podium, it's great news. I gotta tell you, this is not the St. John council that I entered 10 years ago. We've come a long way. So here's the observation I'm making. This residential property tax rate with comparing the other cities. So we went from being the worst to now being 4th. The Fredericton, Moncton, and Dieppe, do you know if their assessments went up as much as St. John's at comparable property tax assessments?
Yeah, the Fredericton, Moncton, and Dieppe assessments went up more than the city of St. John.
More than St. John. Do you know if they reduced their tax rate based on that?
They did, yes.
More or less than what St. John did?
Moncton was very comparable, and I think Fredericton was a little bit less, but they all significantly reduced their tax rate.
So here's my observation. We did exactly what they did, and we are now so close to them if they didn't reduce their tax rates as much as we did or more, we would be below them as well.
Yeah, and that's
You know.
why I think the strategic plan, the 10-year strategic plan, is a really good document because it balances acknowledging that we do need to be, it's an actual objective in the strategic plan. It's nice to have that objective not in a financial plan, it's in the strategic plan. So it balances the need to provide valued services, being a vibrant community, all the important things for a municipality, but also making sure that it's competitive so we invite, we're receptive to new businesses, new residents, and we do grow.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, this is a great spot to be in because we've, some of us sat around this table when, you know, it was all doom and gloom. We had a lot of cuts to make and it wasn't fun. And now we're in a position where things have paid off. You know, we're stabilized. We've got good financial, you know, stewardship. And I want to thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Radwan, over to you.
Thank you, CFO Fudge. I think, you know, as I was watching you going through this presentation, I just thought we need to get you in front of every developer, every student that's thinking about coming to St. John, every business that's looking to open, person that's thinking to open a business in St. John. And I think that we need to keep in mind that the province and the federal government have been making some very strategic investments in the city now. And that's something that I feel that has changed significantly. So if we're looking at the two schools, you know, hopefully the Uniplex is obviously one of our priorities, but even the affordable housing, you know, the Housing Accelerator Fund, if that gets approved, I mean, you know, MP Long has brought in $1 billion into the city since he's been in office. There's been huge investments in the university and the campus out at MBCC. So I can see those investments just making our financial plan hopefully improve in the future. And if we do get some more municipal reforms, it can only help improve, I think. But I think that I think all the residents out there, you know, that might be watching, they just need to keep sharing your message because that's what's going to grow the population. That's what's going to bring developers. That's what's going to boost our not-for-profits and get more businesses open. So thank you very much for all of your dedication.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fudge. One more from Councillor Sullivan.
Just happy to wrap it up if there aren't any other questions, Your Worship.
I'm going to make a comment.
Go right ahead.
I just want to also thank your team as well. Thank you and your team. Excellent job, Craig. And I know you're the only representative over here other than the commissioner, but thanks to the team. Great work. I liked your line, financial austerity to financial excellence. And you know what? That does wrap it up and it's perfect. It's a perfect line. The other thing I'll quickly say is that I want to thank my own team because, you know, it's all this wonderful advice and work that staff done is useless if we don't take their advice and we don't look after that leadership. So I want to thank my own team for going, you know, for spending the time and reading the documentation and accepting the leadership of our great team. So thank you very much. I'm going to hand over the last word to Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks, Your Worship. And I will spread the love around a little further even. Long-term financial plan and the financial success we've had is because of the effort throughout the organization. Certainly the leadership of council and the finance committee and our finance department. But documents like the budget monitoring policy, that piece, that applies to everybody throughout the organization when they're applying their own individual budgets and work. And we're seeing it now in the budget process that everybody's coming forward. And it's tough to ask folks when they have dreams of how they want to build a better St. John to come in with the status quo budget. And the teams are doing it and they're looking at what the possibilities are under stretch. But really, it's an organizational shift that has been successful. And just to wrap up, you know, the long-term financial plan started when times were tough. And it was so important to be disciplined and follow the long-term financial plan when times are tough. It's just as important, if not more important, to continue to follow the long-term financial plan when things are good. Because ultimately, it was when things were going well and commitments were made long ago that dug us a $10 million hole when things turned bad. And so the fact that we have this long-term financial plan, it keeps us competitive. It finds a way to finance their strategic goals and the growth goals within the disciplined structure. So it is good all the way around. And then just while people are listening, I'll give a shout out to Shape Your Budget because I should have done it earlier. Available online. Check stjohn.ca to have input on next year's budget. And with that, I will move the recommendation that Common Council approve the 2023-2032 long-term financial plan.
Thank you, Counselor. I'll take a seconder on that. On the deputy, on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. And City Clerk? That's
That was the final item. Your Worship.
excellent. Over to Counselor Lowe for the motion to adjourn. Okay. Counselor Ogden. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, team.